Is Tim Duncan the greatest power forward of all time? Is he a power forward at all? I say no and no. Listen, let's take a look at the guy's skill set. Okay, you're talking about a 7-footer that plays back to the basket post game, great shot blocker. That is the prototypical center. If I tell you, hey, I got a guy that's 7 foot tall, he's a great shot blocker, and he plays back to the basket with a great post game, what's the first thing you're going to think about? You're not going to think about a doggone power forward. Secondly, Tim Duncan played in an era where all the power forwards were athletic. They all filled the lanes. They all had different ways of scoring around the rim. They played a game that was much, much different than Tim Duncan, and none of them was 7 foot. You're talking about Barkley's. You're talking about Karl Malone's. You're talking about Shawn Kemp's. He even played against Amari Stoudemire, but at no point in his career did he play against a 7 foot power forward that played back to the basket. There is no other power forward in the history of the NBA that fits those qualifications. Tim Duncan is the only one. Again, I say he's not a power forward. He's a center. He was simply called a power forward by the San Antonio Spurs for a certain reason, and it was to protect his legacy. Tim Duncan's the guy that never got respect. Tim Duncan's the guy that's always been overlooked. Although he's been consistent, although he's a great champion, nobody really appreciated his game. Well, they made sure that they would appreciate his game by labeling him the best power forward of all time, despite the fact that he was not a power forward. If you keep him, if you put him and label him what he really is, which is a center, now all of a sudden, he's going to see much, much more disrespect as a retired player because now he's behind Shaq. Now he's behind Kareem. Now he's behind Hakeem. Now he's behind Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain. So the best thing to do is keep him at power forward. Very, very good marketing strategy by the San Antonio Spurs and Tim Duncan's PR guys. But for the sake of argument, let's say that he is a power forward, okay? He still doesn't have better numbers than the great Karl Malone. Karl Malone is the second leading all-time scorer in NBA history. Right now, despite having down years, despite the decline of his career, despite going to LA and having subpar years, he's still averaging 25.6 points per game. 25 points a game. That's phenomenal. Tim Duncan is averaging 10.8 rebounds. Karl Malone is averaging 10.1. Karl Malone's averaging 3.5 assists. Tim Duncan's averaging 3. The only thing that Tim Duncan is better at is blocking shots. And that will make a whole lot of sense considering he's a 7-foot center. Now, some people want to bring up defense. Tim Duncan was a great defender. I make no bones about that. He was a great defender. But that's because he's a great shot blocker. Nobody said he was a great one-on-one defender. Nobody said that he was an enforcer. When you talk about Karl Malone, that's exactly what you're talking about. Number one, Karl Malone did make 3 first-team all-defensive NBA and 1 second team. Not only that, Karl Malone is the prototypical, the baddest, the toughest type of enforcer. This is the same dude that busted Isaiah Thomas's head down to the white meat, had him leaking on the floor, all in the paint like this, in a fetal position. He missed 2 games after that. He kicked Tim Duncan in his face. He went to war with Dennis Rodman. So when you talk about an overall defensive player, I'm taking Karl Malone all day, every day. Now, moving on, because obviously the stats kill it. Let's suppose that they switch teams, because it always comes back to that. You Tim Duncan fans, it always comes back to that. Well, he got 5, Karl Malone don't have none. Well, do me a favor, let's switch them. Let's put Karl Malone over there with Greg Popovich. Let's put him over there with David Robinson, Mario Elie, Ginobili, Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard, and them guys. I would say that he would have just as many rings. He would definitely have 5 rings, if not more, considering the fact that Tim Duncan did play in an era where he played against a vulnerable LeBron James, okay? Now, let's switch that and put Tim Duncan with the Utah Jazz and make Tim Duncan go against Michael Jordan with only John Stockton. How would that turn out? I would dare to say Tim Duncan will have no rings. Karl Malone will have 5 or more. Tim Duncan is not the best center, not the best power forward of all time. That would go to Karl Malone. I could also make an argument for Charles Barkley.